to focus on that component of engagement. Because listen, everything is competing for your employees' attention.
Welcome to the Cleaning Up Podcast, Millionaire Secrets of the Home Services Industry, brought to you by me, Ron Holt, CEO and founder of Two Maids and a Mop, America's fastest growing cleaning company. I get a chance to sit down with home service industry pros and other entrepreneurial leaders so they can share their stories, their insight, their experiences. It's so much fun. You're going to learn so much. You're going to be inspired to take your small business into a national brand just like I did. Let's jump right into the interview. Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Ron, thank you so much for the opportunity to share some of this with your listeners.
You bet. You bet. All right. So I'm sure there's some old timers in our network that remember you fondly, but there's a lot of new guys too. We've had a lot of success and growth since we last met in person. So for the folks that have no idea who Tim David is, and they've heard all this great introduction about magic, you got to wow them here. So tell everyone a little bit about your background and what gives you the right to tell people how they can influence others.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, growing up, my mother was an accountant. My older brother went off to college to become a sound engineer, and he now works for Bose Speaker Corporation. And my father was an ex-physics teacher who then left teaching to design nuclear submarines for the Navy. So naturally, the career path for our family was sort of traditional. You go to college, you get a degree, you start your career. And for me, for whatever reason, that just didn't sort of pan out. I ended up coming home and telling my dad, hey, listen, I figured out what I want to do with my life. I figured out my dream. I know what it is. I want to drop out of college and become a professional magician. And of course, that didn't go over so well. He had the reaction that you might expect a sort of straight-laced traditional science, facts kind of mindset, very type A, that sort of reaction to have. Sure. And we butted heads for a very long time, and he was right for a very long time. I was really struggling, and anybody who's starting a business, really, and that's really what it was. It was a service-based business where I would go into people's homes and perform these magic shows for their families, for their parties, and those types of things. And it was a struggle. I was banging my head against the wall. I was doing between 1 and 2 shows per month. And in the Boston area where I'm from, at about $100 a show, that was not paying the bills. In any area of any country, that wouldn't really be paying the bills. So, I remember my dad vividly. I remember this moment. He brought me over to the kitchen table and he spread out all the bills that he had received that month. And he just grabbed his calculator. He just started to show me a dose of reality. He punched in the numbers and he said, look, it is going to cost you $800 per month just to live at my house. So he started implementing this rent policy of $800 a month. And like I said, I was making 1 or 2 if I was lucky, and just really struggling. So I racked up a bunch of credit card debt. I had to get a side job, had to get a car to get to said side job. And the bills were racking up. The responsibility was sort of racking up, and the reality was setting in. And, I know that many of your listeners, as franchisees, have a different sort of approach. There's a proven plan that they have, and if they follow the plan, then the results will follow. They have these best practices that they can follow. And it really took that for me as well. I had to find a mentor, somebody who had done it, somebody who had the plan. And once I did that, that's really where the magic career took off, Ron. And really, I guess to make a long story short, I guess the takeaway here is have a plan, follow the plan. And the very next month after I met my mentor, adopted his plan, he taught me everything in a very short period of time. And the very next month, I did 17 magic shows. The month after that, I did 28, almost double. And every month for the next 8 years, I did between 30 and 40 magic shows. On average, with as many as 350 in a year. And I don't know if you know anything about little kids' birthday parties, but man, That is,
I
that is,
I have little
that is
kids at home, so I'm well aware.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was great birth control. I'll tell you that. Having eight or nine of these a weekend sometimes it was wild, but and I began to grow and develop the business and evolve, and as my life changed, my needs changed, and I think that's true of a lot of people. I had kids of my own and realized that I couldn't be touring, I couldn't be driving around the country, performing all these shows at schools and stuff, and started to do more programs for grown-ups and adults, and they started taking an interest. Hey, how did you make this transformation? How did you run your business? And I began teaching some of the business strategies and really success strategies that I learned, not just behind the scenes, not just running the business, but also the strange and interesting laboratory that is a stage in front of an audience of people with performing a magic show. There's some interesting lessons that can be learned about human behavior and ultimately influence, which became my topic of choice, which fed into really my main sort of speaking topic. I write a lot about influence, but my speaking topic is sort of the core secret behind really everything that I've ever done.
So how many dark secrets did you uncover from hypnotizing people on stage? Any fun ones to share?
No, I never did much of the hypnosis, but what ended up happening was, and I certainly never wanted to embarrass anybody on stage. I had the client who was paying me for sure, and they sometimes wanted me to embarrass the people on stage. I had the audience who was sort of another a person I had to please, and they sometimes wanted me to embarrass the person on stage. But sometimes that person on the stage was, the CEO or something along those lines. So always kept it PG for sure, and anything above. I always let them embarrass themselves. I didn't want to do that for them. If anybody was on stage with me, that was their job.
Well, I do remember your speech here, and it was awesome. It was a lot of times you're in these stuffy ballrooms for 60 minutes or whatever. And, it's everyone's seen the speech and everything. And so you kind of get bored, I guess is the best way to put it. But you did not, you kept everyone engaged, including myself. It was fun. It wasn't just another presentation, and you included the audience, like you said, and you utilized all these magic tricks. But really, when it boils down to all those things, what I think was you influenced people, and that's what I'm excited to talk with you about today, because I know that there was a transformation in your life when you kind of almost pivoted a little bit, I guess we'll call it, from a magician to something a little bit different, right?
Yeah, and there's a huge lesson in what you just said, the importance of engaging people. And as a speaker or even as an author, people think, well, if you just give them the information, just give the audience the information, just tell your employees what to do, and they'll go ahead and do it because the information is so good. Even when I was performing magic, there are a lot of magicians who would say, just do great tricks and the audience will be engaged. But the truth of the matter is, the engagement piece is just as much of a skill, if not more so, than the actual tactics and techniques of performing a magic trick, or the actual nuts and bolts of a policy or procedure that you're trying to convey to employees. So the information itself has value, but the delivery of that information, the way that people engage, and I kind of teased it earlier, but this is the real secret sauce behind everything I've done, from winning that international award as a mentalist, which is a branch of magic, to becoming this best-selling author and speaker, and really every level of success that I've had has come back to that little element, Ron, that you just touched on, and it really has to do with engaging the audience. Now, the pivot that I made from magic to speaking, a lot of people would think, hey, easy, you're standing on a stage, you're opening your mouth, sound is falling out, and people are clapping, laughing, and responding. It's the same thing, right? Absolutely not. There was certainly a long transition period where I had to learn some of the nuance and some of the difference. But anytime I moved away, Ron, anytime I moved away from the entertainment aspect, the engagement aspect, when I was trying to sort of legitimize myself and say, hey, I'm not just a funny haha magic show guy, do your tricks, monkey boy. There's actually some real lessons and valuable content here. And I tried to almost move away and rebrand and take away some of the magic components to what I did. And every time I moved away from engagement, every time I moved away from entertainment, the results that I was experiencing, the success that I was experiencing fell away off a cliff. So it is incredibly important to this day. Now, granted, I typically only will do one performance piece, one brief performance piece in a speech, but all of those entertainment elements are still part of every aspect of the speech as well. So if there's one thing that your listeners take away from this interview to this point, and we may have another thing later on, but right now, I think the major takeaway certainly is to focus on that component of engagement. Because listen, everything is competing for your employees' attention. Everything is competing for your attention, right? So the more we can engage people, the more we can create that level of almost entertainment, right? Almost, I call it human connection. That's really sort of the secret sauce behind what I do, that human connection component. That's what drives influence. That's what drives behavior. That's what drives motivation. That's what drives, loyalty and retention. That's what drives all of these things, is creating those moments of connection. And oftentimes, like I said, there's a lot of things competing for their attention that we have to be careful of.
Well, look, I'm a firm believer that whether you're running a family, a church, a business, no matter what you're doing, no matter if you're serving a customer or engaging with an employee, you're putting on a show. There is a show somewhere in there, and there's a story inside that show that it's your job as a leader of that organization to sell. And so oftentimes when I think about influence, when I guess first off, that word almost sounds a little dirty. Like nobody wants to force somebody into something. Most people want organic, sort of following. Like you want people to follow because, not because of words. But once you get past that, again, I think a lot of people, again, including myself, when you think influence, you really think about sales techniques and marketing process and strategy and things that you can do to earn a new customer. And I obviously believe that's a huge part of what, you're sharing with your content. But I'd like to drill that down to something that most people don't really think about when they think about influence. And you've touched on it a lot in our talk already, but it's employee engagement, the employee experience. In our world here in the residential cleaning industry, and really all blue collar industries, it's tough. It's tough out there. And obviously COVID didn't make matters any easier for us, but it wasn't easy before that either. Hiring people has never been easy. And keeping people is even harder. And so I believe that there's an opportunity for everyone to learn from you and what you've learned as a showman that they can use as a leader in their organization. Do you agree with that? Is that something that you can help us think about more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely 100% correct when you say every business is show business to some degree. And, I think you do a great job of this, Ron, as the leader of Two Maids and a Mop, or sort of one of the, primary faces of the organization. You share your story. You share that human component, and story is one of the best tools that we have to create connection. So, one of the things I talk about in my book, Magic Words, is the idea behind the power of the word because. If you were to stop people in the street and say, hey, why are you going to work right now? Why are you doing that? And the person who says, because I need to eat, I need to make money, they're somewhat motivated, okay? But if something else comes along that's going to pay them more money, they're not exactly as motivated as they could be. They might not be completely engaged while they're at work. They might just show up, punch a clock, go through the motions, and sort of be that kind of robotic person who's just there collecting the paycheck, punching the proverbial clock. So, we need to find some more people and find out what is it that really drives people. We might ask somebody, hey, why do you do what you do? Why are you going to work right now? And this person might say, well, because I have to. I have to put a roof over my family's head. I have to pay for health insurance. I have these people that I'm providing for. And that's a little less selfish. There's sort of a different reason beyond themselves, and they're a little more motivated. But once again, if the primary driver is money, you're running into trouble. Eventually, you're running into trouble. So, we need to ask some more people, what is it that really drives you? We ask somebody, hey, why are you going to work? Oh, I like the people that I work with. I go to work as it's fun, right? These people are sort of socially motivated. They enjoy that. And anytime you can create that culture at work that feels like a family, feels like a group of people that you want to be around, that's one of the primary jobs, I believe, as a leader of an organization is being the creator of that culture, a facilitator of a culture like that as best as you possibly can. And a lot of that has to do with, once again, telling that story, saying, hey, this is why we do what we do. So that person might be motivated, but they also might be socially motivated. So they're on their Facey Spaces and their MyTubes and their interwebs while they're at work, and they're clickety clacking and scrolling and swiping, and maybe not as engaged in the work itself. So two more people we're going to ask, and we're going to get to the real reason, I think, what we can all do to create motivation within people and retention within people. So we asked this person, say, hey, why do you do what you do? This person says, oh, because I chose this. This is a career path that I went to school for. I pursued this. I've always wanted to do this. And this person is really motivated. That's fantastic. But there's really one more person that I want to talk to. There's a person who says, I do this because I love it. More importantly, how about this? I do this because I'm called to. Now, if we're talking to two people in the street, one of them says, I do it because I need to make money. And the second person says, I do it because it's a calling. Holy moly. Wow. How can you compare the difference between motivation? Now,
Sold.
I know.
Yeah.
I know that there are many volunteer organizations, that I've spoken for, and I show up, and these people, remember, volunteer. They do not get paid, but they pour their blood, sweat, and tears into that organization day in and day out. And it's incredible the level of motivation that people will have for a cause bigger than themselves, for a calling that they have to be better, to do better, to improve the world around them, to help people. So when you're trying to find out what is it that motivates people, many people, again, will look right at the dollars and cents and say, well, this is what they're asking for. This must be what they want. But if you truly ask people what they want, sometimes they'll tell you, we just want more money. They're wrong. They're wrong. They believe it. We all believe that more money will make us happier, just like, we all believe money will make us more motivated, but neither one is true. Ron, I saw a t-shirt the one time that said, all I want is the chance to prove that money won't make me happy. Right? So there is that deception that we sometimes deceive ourselves that money will motivate us. But, and in the book Magic Words, we go over all kinds of different ways to uncover what somebody's because is. You cannot give someone a because. You can uncover their because, and then you can reflect it back to them when they need that motivation.
All right. So I know there's people out there. They're super excited. They hear you. They're engaged as we speak. We've teased them with this opportunity to improve their hiring practice, to improve their retention within their employee structure there. We're in the cleaning business, man. It is hard to think that somebody out there is dying to work for us, So again, I believe, just like you said, just like you proved, that when you use the word because, when you have a story behind a reason, that gives you a better opportunity. But I want to try to get as granular as possible. So I'm going to put you on the spot if you're cool with that.
Sure.
All right. So we're in the hiring phase. We've got dozens and dozens of applications. People are, it looks like pretty interested in the job. We want to get them to show up for the interview. The problem is, in our world, in the blue collar world, there are dozens of employers that also want to hire that same person. And getting someone to show up for an interview is a big deal. Like the arrival rate, if that's a term, is atrocious. It's almost embarrassing. And it's not just Two Maids and a Mop. It's literally all of blue collar organizations across this country, pre-COVID even. So what can we do? We have an opportunity to engage with that job applicant prior to that face-to-face interview, or in today's world, that Zoom interview. What can we do from a just influence perspective? What can we do to just guarantee or give ourselves a better chance, at least, of getting someone to show up for the interview?
On the tactics side of things, the way I will always structure an approach to any situation is I look at, okay, who am I speaking to, first of all? And I think it's really important to understand that who. And you've outlined a sort of an avatar here, somebody who is, needs a job. They're being, possibly courted. Maybe they've sent their resumes out to a bunch of places. They have a bunch of offers, hopefully, that are coming in. So, now that you have that who, then we look at, okay, what is the strategies that will line up with them, not to trick them. I think it's really important to get away from the mindset of, this is a machine, and if I just push the right buttons, then they will show up. So they're really, at the end of the day, there are no magic bullets or magic pills that will force anybody to do anything, which I think is a great thing. I think free will is
pretty good.
Very important. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So all that being said, there are certainly some best practices. There are certainly some, influence tactics and techniques. In fact, if your listeners would like, I can share with them. There's this document that I have. It's something that I flip through and reference if there's a challenge like this, and it's over 60 different psychological influence tactics and strategies. And so my advice would literally be, look at that person as best you can. And in the book Flip, we talk about the itch bullseye target of how to really identify who this person is on a deep level, and then handpick some of those tactics and strategies and just work them into what you're already doing organically, and maybe even find out, hey, what are some of the things that you're doing that might be creating what we call friction, or might be creating what we call resistance to, so instead of inviting them, you might accidentally be actively pushing them away. So I would sort of do like a little bit of an audit and look at that person who's doing the interviewing and the engagement of that employee, all the way through the process of that, and then plug in some of those tactics. And if they want that, to make it nice and simple, it's just moreinfluential.com, and it's literally just, you can download it there at
Awesome.
moreinfluential.com.
Well, thank you for that. So yeah, in our world, it's a job, and there's so many people in our world that believe it is just simply that, a job. And I believe that you actually said it. Anytime you use the word because, it almost doesn't really matter what the because is. I'm assuming that there are better becauses than other becauses. I've said a lot of becauses there.
Right.
But just simply using that word gives people a reason to think there's a opportunity there for them, and we're like a lot of blue collar organizations. We all have a job. We will pay you for that job if you will do the work. What if we could say, we will pay you to do that job, and this is why we want you to do that job. This is what it means to the customer. This is what it means to the organization. This is what it means for you. That's something that very few people are able to really convey. I mean, we think about Disney all the time when we think about, you think about almost, other than the C-level executives at Walt Disney, everyone else there, for the most part, they probably don't like to be called this, but they're blue collar employees. Turnover level is extremely low there. Engagement's through the roof. People brag about that. People hire ex-Disney employees because it's on their resume. Yet at the end of the day, these are janitors just like us. They're really no different. So there's a story behind the employment at Disney that you don't always get at the other rival blue-collar organization. So hopefully there's an opportunity there for someone to learn that when you're trying to just literally attract someone to the job, maybe it's simple as just what Tim said. Use the word because. Have a story behind it.
Yeah, I mean, and if we're back, to tactics, and real quick too, my grandfather was a janitor, and I tell the story in the book of one of the days I went to his place of employment and I was greeted like a king, and how he took his job of janitor and how he made it meaningful. He always taught me work doesn't bring meaning to your life. You bring meaning to your work. And, so there's some of those stories in the book as well. But, I think another tactic that we can use, and this is going to sound super simple, but man, is it powerful. And real quick, Ron, what is the exact sort of level of engagement that they'll have pre-interview? Is it a conversation? Is it emails? What's going on there?
Well, that's a great question, Tim. So it can really be what they want it to be. I guess the most basic 101 level is historically a face-to-face interview preceded by an introductory phone call. In today's environment, that face-to-face interview has been replaced with a Zoom interview for the most part. But it's really two different forms of communication, a phone and then Zoom or face-to-face, but it doesn't have to end there. Those are the basic engagement processes, but there can be other things.
Gotcha. So here's what I would suggest then. If you're on a phone call, straight, down the middle, a simple tactic is once again to use and remember this person's name. So many times we almost treat people as a commodity because, I've got to get through these calls. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. But using that person's name almost tricks your brain into creating more human connection with that person. It certainly tricks their brain into feeling more valued and heard and understood. So use their name more often, not every other word, but certainly use it throughout the conversation as part of the tactics that you might use. Secondly, I would share a story of an employee who we call this the then, now, how formula. So I would say, okay, tell me a little bit about yourself. Oh man, we had somebody just like you in that situation. That's the then part of your story. And it can take two sentences to tell the then part of a story. And then you say, now this person is XYZ, has risen through the ranks, is passionate for their job, whatever it is, the outcome that you hope, once again, loyalty, retention, whatever. And then the how portion of it is, showing up for the interview, number one, but becoming part of this organization, becoming part of what we're doing here with this Two Maids and a Mop franchise. So, so I think those little things working together, in addition to constantly feeling the pull of creating a human connection with the person. So those are the things that you can say. I think, and this is tough to teach. But man, Ron, I did a year with the suicide prevention crisis hotline. And I was the guy that people would call when they're on the bridge ready to jump, or they have the gun in their mouth, or they have the bottle of pills in their hand, and they just would reach out for help. I would answer the phone, one of a team of many, many people. And the number one lesson that I learned, and this is going to directly apply to your situation that you're describing here, Ron, is that you cannot talk people out of suicide. You cannot talk people into showing up for an interview. What you can do is you can listen people out of suicide. The golden ratio that they teach is 90% listening, 10% speaking. There are some cases where there is an extreme sort of high level of risk or high imminent emergency where you do have to kind of take charge and step in. But for the most part, when it comes to this crisis intervention, they teach 90% listening and 10% speaking. And the speaking that you're doing is asking questions. And the questions you would ask are to tease out what their because is. What are their responsibilities? What do they need this money for? What do they need this job for? Why? One of the things I always like to ask, here's another question, Ron. What got you excited enough to apply for this position?
It's a great question.
I love that question.
Yeah.
What got you excited enough? Because it implants that idea of, oh yeah, I was excited. Obviously, I had to be motivated enough to do this. Why, what got me excited? And they start telling you their becauses. Then I like this question a lot too. On a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you? How motivated are you? How likely are you? You can even ask it straight up to show up for this interview. I think this would be a great opportunity. What do you think? How at the end of the call, how did we do? How motivated are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Now that's the regular part, right? We're going to get to the ninja advanced brain hack part here. They may say 7. They may say 3. They may say 10. It doesn't matter. You're going to ask them the next question. And the next question is, why didn't you say a lower number? So if they say 7, that doesn't sound very great. You say, oh, well, why wasn't it a 6 or a 5? What motivated you all the way up to a 7? And they'll continue to feed you more of their becauses. And once you know what their becauses are, once again, you just simply reflect that back to them. That's another listening technique. So, at the end of the day, there's a little bit there, Ron. There's a little bit of a dipping into the bag of tricks and pulling out some of the tactics that I think
I love it.
Certainly help. You can add those in, work them in for your own style and approach. But those are very sort of tactical, practical, granular, actionable ideas that I think people can start seeing quick results with.
I think they're phenomenal, and I think that I'll use them myself. So I love both of those ideas, and we'll put those into action, and we'll see what happens. And I love the fact that ultimately what you're trying to do is to get someone, it sounds like, to kind of think about the positive benefits and get them to almost visualize those positive benefits in their mind so that they'll sell themselves on the reasons behind what you want them to do. So
that is 1,000% correct. A lot of times when we think of convincing someone to do something, we have to make it sound really good. I want to put my best foot forward. I want to make this opportunity, tell all the great things about the opportunity. Oh, here's another great tactic, Ron. You might tell them the reasons why they wouldn't want to come to the interview. You might say, hey, listen, I know there's a lot of other opportunities. Here's one reason you might not want to come work for us. And when people do that, it creates certainly a level of openness and honesty and transparency. But number 2, they think instead of like, oh, here are all the reasons I don't want this job, you just told them one of the reasons. So now they think, well, I can overcome that, right? It just shifts their thinking. And there's a lot of science behind this. In fact, Robert Cialdini, the author of Influence, the sort of godfather of the science of influence, I was having a conversation with him and I asked him point blank, what's the number one technique? What's the number one tactic? All things being equal. And he said, sort of this idea of unselling. Tell them why they wouldn't want to do it. So that their brain isn't searching for that anymore. Now they're searching for the solution to that problem. So once again, I think all of these things working together will give you a really good shot. But again, don't try to make it sound so great. Find out why they would think something sounds great. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. And then you can say, oh, great, that's fantastic that you want that because we have this, this, and this. And that's all you got to do.
That's so cool. All right, so let's move into some relationships building. I don't know if that's the right term, but that's what we'll go with here. But when you hire, let's assume that person showed up. You did everything right. They showed up. They were phenomenal. They love you. You love them. You hire them. They're working. Turnover exists after that. We want people to stick around. Obviously, everyone does. And in our world, turnover is a real thing, and it can cause a lot of problems. Obviously, there's like tactical things that go wrong, quality control issues. But obviously, even from a bigger perspective, it changes the culture and the morale of the organization if there's a lot of just moving ins and outs. You don't want to see different people every other day.
Right.
So what can we do beyond the obvious? You got to treat people well. You got to follow the law. You got to respect people. You got to give them work so they can get paid. What are some influential tactics that we can use to create a stronger relationship with the people working with us and for us? I know that's a tough question, but anything can be helped here.
Oh, no, I'm excited to answer this one. So, one of the main avenues when creating influence strategies is we look at the human brain. We look at, what is it that drives behavior? What is it that drives decision making? What is it that goes against a certain behavior? Again, we call that resistance to persuasion. Fancy name right there. But those are the things we look at. So it's almost like, if you're designing clothing, you want to look at the person who's going to be wearing that clothing. Okay, this person has a head, probably should put a hole at the top of the shirt. They have 2 arms, got to put 2 holes there. So you design according to what's sort of already there for you. And that allows us, a framework within which to get creative and innovative. So, the number one reason why people will leave a job, right? Because people don't quit their job. People quit their boss. At the end of the day, people quit their boss or they quit the people that they work with, right? If there is a relationship breakdown, then very often that can lead to a person leaving a position. So how can we fix, you mentioned relationship building, right? How can we sort of pour into that bucket so that doesn't become empty and create this relationship disconnect? I wish it was more complicated, Ron. I wish I had a really cool ninja answer for this. But I think it's my favorite magic word in the book. When I was writing it, and even after, just all of the research, all of the evidence has been piling up, and the importance of this magic word, and it is simply the magic word thanks. And the more appreciation we can show to people, the more that, and this is important, right? We get no credit in life. We get no boss points for saying thank you. Right? People think that's where the magic is. In reality, we get boss points. We get relationship deposits. We get credit when they feel appreciated. And that is a tiny but important difference and an important distinction. You can say to somebody, hey, thanks for doing a great job. I said thanks. Maybe they don't feel appreciated even though you said it. Maybe you give them a caught doing good coupon, right? Yay! That might have been good the first time, but if they have 600 of those piled, in their workspace, that's going to lose its luster pretty quickly. So the bosses who can convey appreciation almost continuously, right? They need a lot more than we think they need. And as do we. I think we all need that sense of feeling appreciated, like our work is valuable. Once again, it comes back to why. We have this because we're doing this thing, and then that because is meaningful, right? People appreciate it. There is gratitude there. So, the other thing I like about thanks is the more you say thanks, the more you appreciate people. There are so many benefits to you. In fact, people who are more grateful live an average of 7 years longer than people who are not, grateful people. So, and there's a bunch of other cool little benefits. They sleep better. There's all kinds of cool stuff. So, that's a nice little double-edged sword. Say thanks, feel gratitude. It's all great. How do you do that practically? Once again, you can have conversations with people. You can, find all these different ways to do that. That's important. You can ask them. You can, obviously the book Magic Words has a litany of different ideas and strategies for doing that. But think about this: what will make them feel appreciated, and then make sure that happens on a regular, consistent basis.
You know what? And you're right. It's we all want this to be so complex and complicated.
I
We
know.
want it.
I wish it was sexy.
There's literally books written about, how to build the right culture. But gosh, send a simple text. Do it today. Like literally just find one of your employees today, figure out something you want to say thanks to them about, and just see what happens. In worst case, nothing happens, right? It can only be a good thing.
One of my favorite techniques is to sort of share the end result. So anytime you get a testimonial from a client, anytime they send you a picture and say, "Oh my gosh, above and beyond, this was a great job," any sort of feedback that you get from any kind of end user, right? In this case, the homeowner, share that. Highlight that, do it publicly, in a meeting, in a Zoom meeting, whatever, do it where everybody else can hear you thanking this person and spread it around, make sure that that people feel that appreciation. There's even some people who will be, constantly at odds with you. And you can even thank them for that. You can say, thank you for your alternative perspective. You can even show gratitude when it seems like, a lost cause. So try to get in the habit of that.
We can do that. Right, guys? All right. So I want to end with something kind of fun. We've been talking kind of for the most part about our employee relations and how to hire better and how to keep people on the payroll longer. But just a general, I'd love to hear just sort of a general take on influence. And I really want to make this as difficult as possible on you. So if you could think back into your mental Rolodex of influence and think about one of the most difficult, more challenging situations that you can think of, and tell us a little bit about how someone overcame those using some of these techniques. I think it can kind of bring home in this theory of influence and make it seem a little bit more real for everyone. Does anything pop to mind?
Immediately there are 5 to 10 stories that I can't share from the suicide prevention hotline that come to mind. But I will say this, when it gets to the life or death situations, those are the ones that seem most salient, that seem certainly powerful. There are, there's all kinds of stories that do come to mind. In fact, the entire book, The 4 Levels of Influencing People, that you sort of mentioned at the top of this broadcast here, is more story based, because Magic Words has the tactics, the techniques, the science, and then the 4 Levels of Influencing People is sort of an organized group of stories of these things being applied and how they can be practically and tactically applied. And one of the first is this guy who came to me, and man, oh man, I get all kinds of different requests for how to influence certain people in certain ways, from the guy who wants to influence the girl to go out with him to the poker player on the World Series of Poker Tour who asked me to influence his opponents to believe that he was giving tells when he was not giving tells, and all kinds of mental chess game that was going on with that. All kinds of different stuff.
Mine, by the way, is how to influence my wife when we were going through that whole song and dance about which restaurant should we go to, where we actually go to the one I want to.
One.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. So, just fun stories of, I think the best way to influence anybody really is to make them think that it was their idea. People will support what they create. So this is why I'm a big fan of questions, asking questions. Hey, what should we do about this problem? We have a problem. What do you think we should do about it? You have the solution in your back pocket, right, Ron? But you're going to ask them, what do you think we should do about it? And then coach them and guide them through questions towards coming up with that idea themselves. But I think to answer your question directly, one of the requests that I got really stuck out to me. I got an email from a guy. I actually have the email right here. I'll read it to you. It's one little paragraph. I'm the chair of the school building committee in my town, and we are trying to persuade the community to support a major school construction project. We have not constructed a new school nor completed any major renovation in more than 50 years. I must instill a sense of need in the community at large so that we can ensure a new school is constructed for the children. Every other town in the area had constructed a new school in something like the previous 10 years, let alone 50 years. The entire community had been stubbornly resisting any kind of investment in the education facilities for decades, and they had drawn the line in the sand. They had reasons why. There was something to do with, oh my gosh, I can't ever remember, some kind of water. I can't remember what it was, but there was some reason why they felt that it would damage the community and all kinds of stuff. So he just said, how do I get them to do this? And I'll share with you the results. He sent me an email later on after I coached him through some things. He delivered almost like a TED Talk kind of presentation, like a very short 15-minute or so presentation, embedding a lot of the techniques that I shared with him. And he did a great job of it. But he said at the very end of the video, there were 981 people there at this meeting. And when he asked, if you want to build this school, please stand up, 961 of them stood up, all in unison. And then there was a vote, and 83% of the voters approved, and construction began. And that was a $96.4 million school that Words built.
Wow. That's amazing, right? I mean, 50 years of nothing, fast forward to a $100 million project. And really the only thing that changed was words and the delivery of those words. So,
it never fails to instill sort of a sense of awe in me at what can be done. I always say, if you want to move mountains, you've got to be able to move people, and you cannot be using. We talk about the 4 levels of influencing people. You cannot be using level 1 and level 2 if the situation calls for level 3 and level 4. And that's what was happening for 50 years. They just didn't convey that message in the proper way for people to understand the value behind it. And he didn't do any, there was no deception, there was no trickery, there was no chest pounding, there was no, salesmanship really going on. It was just differently, how he framed it differently that made all the difference in the world. And, I love seeing the pictures of that school now. And,
I bet you do.
It's really cool feeling. Yeah.
It's amazing. So, what I love about this conversation is that it gives me hope. It gives me hope that, almost any problem, no matter how challenging it may seem, it can be solved. It can be solved by different levels of influence, obviously, but it can be solved. There's no dead end. So if you can talk 1,000 people into approving a $100 million project that no one had approved in the previous 50 years, then you can certainly convince someone to show up for an interview, right?
In 15 minutes. The guy did it in 15 minutes, and it's certainly exciting. It's impressive. It's astounding, but it doesn't cost any extra money. It doesn't take any extra time to change the words that you say. You're already having these interactions. In fact, it'll probably save you time because you don't have to have the interaction over and over and over again. We know that turnover is expensive and it's draining on the culture. We know that it's a pervasive problem. Man, oh man, if we could just, again, change the interactions that we're already having, not with a new budget that we have to approve. We're not spending extra money or extra time here. That's the thing I think that's most exciting about it.
All right, Tim. Well, you've been just as engaging as I knew you would be. I know this is audio, so it's a little bit easier for you to do this in front of people, but you killed it as usual. Thanks for your time today. I'd love for you to connect with anyone listening, anyone out there. I am a huge fan of Tim, and both of the books that I've read have really provided me with serious value, and they've been entertaining. It's been more than just psychological theory. There's been some real case studies. For instance, the school project. I did read about that in one of your books. So I would encourage everyone out there to pick up a copy and then hopefully connect with Tim at some point as well. So Tim, what can people do to connect with you?
I think the best place that I send people to in these types of situations is the website that I have set up specifically for this, which is moreinfluential.com. All it is just a bunch of free resources. Yes, there are links to the books and those types of things, but it's just a collection of tactical, practical ideas and strategies for people in leadership positions to create more connection and influence with the people that they work with day to day.
Well, Tim, we're going to connect again when the world returns to whatever normal is going to be. We'll see each other again, and I'm looking forward to that day you embarrass me on stage one day. So it should be fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ron, for this this platform and this opportunity to sort of share this. Obviously, this is a topic that I'm passionate about. I believe in the importance of it, and any opportunity for me to shout that from the rooftops is always appreciated. So thank you for that.
You bet. All right. Thanks again, Tim. We'll see you down the road.
Hey guys, Beth Lovett in Business Development. If you enjoyed this episode, then please share with your friends and don't forget to tune in to the next episode of Cleaning Up. Have you ever wondered if you wanted to be in business for yourself? If so, then don't hesitate to give me a call at 205-789-8027 or email me at bethl@ineedamaid.com. And if you just want a window shop, then you can see us online at twomaidsfranchise.com.